This is Ian Shelton from Military Gun and Regional Justice Center, and you're listening to The New Scene. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have Austin Kihn of Mind Over Matter Records. Mind Over Matter Records is sponsoring The New Scene for the month of May, so who better to kick things off than the man himself, Austin Kihn, who founded the label in 2009. He has been sitting there in his garage meticulously screen printing and piecing together entire pressings of records by hand, painstakingly printing and piecing together and X-Acto knife cutting the magnificent layouts that accompany his records. And he's done releases for Evergreen Terrace, the Juliana Theory, Zayo, and of course, Memory Entry. So we talked to Austin about his history, the whole history of Mind Over Matter Records, and the intense care and passion that Austin puts into each of his releases. It's a great label, and it's a great conversation, and that's coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Death Wish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. Blood Horse have signed with Iodine Recordings, and they have a new single, Saboteur, streaming right now. Blood Horse features members of American Nightmare, The Red Chord, and All Pigs Must Die. The new LP, A Malign Star, is out May 30th, 2025, and it's limited to 250 copies, so make sure you get one quick. In Pieces, Learning to Accept Silence, finally on streaming services. This is part of Iodine's collaboration with Samsara Records. Make sure you check out this classic today. Jerome's Dream have a gig with Swing Kids and Big Boy. That's May 3rd in Berkeley, California. No Man has European tour dates. Check their page or the Iodine page for a full list of dates. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And say hello to our sponsor for the month of May, Mind Over Matter Records. Post-hardcore band Mission to Sleep have just released their LP, A Spark or the End. Make sure you check out the record on streaming services, and you can order the LP now at mindovermatterrecords.com. There's a second pressing of the self-titled LP by Oriska coming, and they have new t-shirts to go along with the LP. And my band, Memory Entry, just released our debut EP called Our World is Going to Disappear. The Iodine variant of the record is sold out, but there's still a couple left at mindovermatterrecords.com. Make sure you grab one while supplies last. I think there is less than 10 left. We also have 2 new t-shirts to go along with the EP. For more information, head to mindovermatterrecords.com, and you can follow the label on Instagram at MOM Records. Okay, so check back in with me. In segment 3, we'll do a wrap-up of the conversation with Austin. I'll tell you everything that's going on with me. But right now, we are going to speak to Austin Kihn of Mind Over Matter Records. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Austin Kihn. Austin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Keith. It's a pleasure.
Yes, Austin, it is great to have you here. You know, the people know you. I know you from Mind Over Matter Records, a excellent label that you own and run, and it got on my radar big time starting last year. And I want to talk to you all about that and everything else. I want to learn everything about you. But first, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing well. You know, currently it's a gloomy, rainy day here in Chicago, and that is my all-time favorite weather. So while it does keep the energy levels a little bit low, it keeps the spirits high for me. It's been a busy gosh, probably a month for me now. So it feels like I'm kind of coming to a little bit of the tail end of that. I've got some projects in the rear view, a little weight lifted off the shoulder. So I can confidently say I'm in high spirits sitting here today.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I like a day where it's rainy, not too cold, and not too busy, right? There's just a normal amount of work. You can open the window and hear the raindrops, and I'll put on like a ambient Silent Hill playlist or something, and that's it. That's where it's at.
Yeah, when you've got a rainy day and you've got the perfect playlist to go along with it, it's fantastic. You know, my only grievance today is it's a little too cold. It requires a heavy jacket.
Yeah.
But you know, you take what you can get.
We got hit hard today with cold too, but I actually liked it. I was walking to the dentist or heading to the dentist early this morning, and it was 30 degrees again. It was cold, but I just for some reason I just liked it. I didn't put a hood up. I didn't wear a hat. I just embraced the cold. It was good. It was also sunny, which helps. It was very sunny.
Yeah, just gloomy here today. It was perfect gloom weather. You know.
How long have you lived in Chicago?
Oh goodness, about 6.5 years, maybe coming up on 7.
How did you end up there?
It was strictly for work. It was a little bit of personal reasons. You know, we'd lived in Los Angeles prior to that, and we had our firstborn son while we lived out there. And our entire family and support network lives in the Midwest, and it was becoming a little bit of a struggle to spend time with extended family, and vacation time was spent just traveling from LA to the Midwest. And that felt like the opposite of a vacation. You know, we were kind of leaving a little bit of a paradise, and you know, inevitably we would come home in the winter. And you know, there's nothing like leaving 80-degree LA and stepping off the airplane in O'Hare to it being negative 10 degrees. So we wanted to get back closer to family, make it a little bit easier for visits and things like that. And Chicago was a city we had visited tons and tons of times, and we loved it and just never had a reason to go there. So, my wife and I agreed if we were able to get a job, you know, and find employment in Chicago, to move there would be ultimate for us. So fortunately we made it happen, and we made the move here. And this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my entire life. So 6.5 years in one spot is a record for me.
6.5 years is a record. So you must have moved a lot, huh?
So much. Yeah. I've lived in 8 states in my life. And, even within those states would often move, you know, every year your lease would come up, your landlord would raise your rent, and I would just move. And then, you know, once my career started to really kind of take off a little bit, moved even more. And so this is the longest we've put down roots anywhere, my wife and I. It's pretty wild.
You have 2 children?
Correct.
How old are they?
One of them is 4, and the other one turns 8 at the end of this month. So probably by the time this airs, he will have celebrated his birthday.
So you must be busy all the time.
All the time. Everyone around me jokes I'm never not working. I fill every minute of every day.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I don't even have kids yet, at least. Now, is it possible to raise children without a external surrounding family support system? Like, could you have made it work in LA with just your wife?
Yeah, we wouldn't have enjoyed it. It's more challenging for sure, right? But it's possible, it's feasible. It requires essentially one parent to be a stay-at-home parent in order to pull that off. So it really requires you buckle down a little bit, you know. But my wife's family has always been super close, and they all, aside from us, they all live in a pretty similar proximity to one another. So we wanted our kids to still have that, you know, even if my extended family isn't super close. So it felt right to kind of get a little bit closer to home.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I spent most of my formative years in West Michigan, kind of in the Grand Rapids area. Would be the best way to describe it. But in my youth, that's when I moved the most. You know, I was like an army brat without having the privilege of anything that comes along with being in the army. So we just moved a ton when I was younger. But I would say, yeah, most of my adolescence and even on through college was in Michigan.
Why all the moving if no army?
My dad wasn't the most savory or law-abiding person. So he got himself into a lot of legal trouble and would often just move to avoid having to deal with the consequences, and that resulted in us bouncing around all over the place. Not the most ideal role model, you know?
Yeah, that's the good thing, or I guess bad thing, depending who you are. about the old days, right? If you leave a trail of fire, just move to a new state and start over.
Yeah, yeah. My father embodied that for sure.
So I'm curious about your trajectory with music. Is it something you've always been interested in?
Absolutely. I began, I'm a musician first, right? So I played several instruments growing up. I was heavily involved in band in high school. I even considered studying music when I got into college. And, I had, little bands that I would kind of tinker around with through high school, and they were all terrible. But we had lots of fun. It was just me and my friends. And we lived in a really super small town in West Michigan. And there were no record stores near us. The closest we got were some Christian bookstores where we would be able, I would go and I could order some CDs, but they had to be Christian bands in order to acquire them. So it started with, with that type of stuff. That was my introduction to kind of alternative music, so to speak. And I met some folks when I was in high school that got into a little bit of punk rock, some basic stuff, some NoFX, some Rancid, and things of that nature. But then the real turning point for me was I had a friend and a bandmate at the time, and I had already kind of avowed myself to being straight edge when I was in high school. But I didn't know that straight edge was a thing, so I just talked about it, and said, hey, I'm going to stay away from all that stuff. It seems terrible. And this buddy of mine, he hands me an Earth Crisis CD, and he's like, hey, these guys, they sing about all the same stuff you're always talking about. And I mean, it just, blew my hair back. And I was like, what is this? I'd never heard anything like it. And that was really my introduction into like hardcore music and getting into that scene and learning that there was, outside of my little small town where no one was like me, that suddenly I found this whole community of people that shared values and interests, and realizing it didn't have to be Christian, that there was, that there was secular, moral music out there as well. And that carried through for a long time.
Yeah, that must be mind blowing, right? Like you're straight edge, you're part of a movement and you don't even know it. And then Earth Crisis comes along and it's like, what? Like,
yeah,
I was never, well, I like to say that I'm straight edge by necessity now, but that's different. I never avowed myself to straight edge. I never claimed it or anything like that because I started drinking and doing other stuff fairly early. But hardcore, there was this undercurrent of anti-establishment, anti-jock, I don't know if rich person is the right word, but like just this anti-establishment, anti-jock, anti-normal thing. And I really hated jocks and the popular social hierarchies of high school and all that, because I had a really time in grade school and high school. So I really clung to that. And I really liked that angle of the music.
100%. And, I grew up in such a small town that we didn't really have the jock dynamic. It was really a lot of hillbillies. And so it was kind of like there was, the hillbillies, and then there was kind of like these mod indie kids. And, and then I was somewhere on the outside of all of that where it was like, I didn't know if I was punk. I didn't know if I was hardcore. I didn't know if I was indie, but I just liked all of it. And my fashion was all over the place as a result. But like, there wasn't really that strange dynamic. So I would watch, high school movies and I didn't get it because I didn't live in that world necessarily. And it wasn't really until college where that really took off for me, where I then started to see those dynamics, it play out in real life. But at that point, I had already just fully gotten into punk and hardcore, and that became my life. It took over everything that I did.
Yeah, same here. And well, now too, which is great. But did you ever cling to one particular sect of it? I've gone through phases where I was really into metalcore, like late 90s, Converge, Botch, Coalesce, all that, Zayo. And then I got really into post-hardcore. And then I was really into stuff like Blue Tip and Rye Coalition for a minute. And then I got really into post-rock. And I would just like lock on to different things, and that would be my thing. Now I just listen to whatever. But were you like centered in on one particular thing?
I think at first I definitely was. I can remember very, very distinctly when I was in my hardcore phase. Everything had to be fast and loud and screaming, and at that time I'd buy everything that Victory Records put out. And once I got to college and there was a record store within walking distance of me, and I would go in there and I would just buy hardcore CDs. That's what I did. And I remember distinctly going in one day and I picked up a CD and I was like, hey, this is on Victory. This looks great. And it was Taking Back Sunday. Bought it sight unseen, knew nothing about it, and I went in and put it in my CD player and instantly took it right back out. And I was like, nope, this is not for me. But now I can look back at it and I eventually, got acquainted with enough people that I warmed up to pop punk and I warmed up to more of the emo stuff. I remember the first time I heard Jimmy Eat World's Clarity. I was like, oh, gross. But over time, and I don't know if it was through exposure or through just maturity, I grew to really find something that I loved in so many different types of music. And I was fortunate to have people around me at all times that just wouldn't give up. And they would be like, you just got to listen to it again. and I think that helped a ton because, I'm sure you've been there, but you listen to something for the first time and you go, and then you circle back to it a couple times and then you're like, no, this is actually incredible. And I don't know what I thought last time.
Yeah, to some degree, I could not think for myself. So if I heard something like that, I might make fun of it, thinking like that's what everyone wants to hear. But if they were like, no, we like this, I'd be like, oh, okay, But I remember Get Up Kids 4 Minute Mile was the first band like that I liked that wasn't completely heavy and crazy.
Yeah, I listened to, one of my all-time favorite bands is the Smashing Pumpkins. And, looking back, I can really kind of accredit them for my varied taste in music, because if you sit down and you listen to an album like Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, you're going to cover the whole breadth of things. You're going to get some dreamy space rock, and you're going to get some heavy music, and you're going to get some really sad bastard emo music in there, And so, if I can sit down and enjoy that album front to back, there's no reason that I can't hit shuffle on my playlist and be able to swing from Dashboard Confessional to Botch in one movement and not have that even faze me.
That's a great point. Yeah, I loved that record. That was my favorite band in 8th and 9th grade. I've been meaning to go back and listen to that for forever now. I have to. It's a masterpiece.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you're a musician as well.
I play guitar. I cut my teeth on classical music, so I play saxophone. I say that loosely. I haven't picked it up in ages, but it's about 6 feet to my right if I decide I wanted to. But I play guitar, and for a good while in the early 2000s, while I was in college, I was a vocalist in a metalcore band, and most of my touring experience came from just being a front man and not playing any instruments.
What band?
It was called And the Sky Went Red. We were not good.
Now, were you really not good, or is that you being critical of past work? Because I've been very critical of things I've done, but I can say some of it was good. Not all of it. Some of it was good.
I'm confident I'm hypercritical of it. It wasn't anything amazing, which would explain why it never really took off. It wasn't for lack of effort. We put in a lot of time. We played a ton of shows. There was a couple years there where we played more than 200 shows each year, just, getting out there, and we toured east of the Mississippi pretty relentlessly. But it's, looking back on it, I can find some redeeming qualities, but I can also see why it never took off, and I can see why it never got into the zeitgeist.
I was just thinking about this earlier today. Hear me out. Okay. I was thinking about this in terms of my own bands. Certain bands are only going to go so far with the people in that band. If maybe it's the sound, it's just not dynamic enough, or it's just going to be here, or maybe the look has something to do with it, or maybe the people, or maybe the shows you're playing, or maybe the environment, right? Maybe it's just going to go here, but then switch out 3 guys and do something else. Maybe it could explode. You just don't know until you get the right combination of people together, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And ultimately what kind of did us in was we had recorded a couple of EPs and we were just playing all of these shows, just tons and tons of shows, just really off of these same maybe like 10 to 12 songs. And it got to the point where, we were playing the same markets and we would go back down, we'd be states away and we'd play the same venue to the same kids, but we had no new material. And that was where we really kind of started butting heads, was around, hey, I would say, let's record a new album. Let's finish a record and let's do it. And we just never did it, and at the time I had some competing priorities. I had just started my own tattoo parlor. I was a co-owner of a tattoo parlor, and I needed to put some time and energy into that. And I was like, well, I can't be on the road this often and expect my business to be successful. And we're not recording a new album. So that was when I ultimately, hung it up on that one.
So you're in college, you're in a band. How much touring did you do? How far out did you get?
Let's see. We made it as far west as Iowa. We played Des Moines a couple of times, and we never got further west than the Mississippi than that. And that was really about it. But we played pretty heavily in the Midwest and down into, like Tennessee and the Carolinas. And we played a little bit on the East Coast, mostly like northern New York state. We're fortunate enough, I can say that I played CBGB's one time, so that's a nice little feather in my cap there. But it was really heavily around the Midwest. I mean, just tons and tons of shows in the, from Kentucky up to Michigan in that area.
Yeah. What did you want to do? Did you have something in mind that you really wanted to focus on? Was it music? Was it tattooing? Or did you just kind of go where life took you? Like, what was your mindset at the time?
It's always been music. It's, I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this, but that question of like, hey, if money were no object, what would you want to do? And, for me, it's like, I would love to create art. I would love to make music and just do that all day, every day. So the tattooing aspect of it was truly just, money to survive. And that was a big part of my transition through high school and college. We grew up really, really poor. And so once I got into college, it was like, okay, well, this is now me earning my money and trying to get out of that cycle of life. And the band, is as fun as it was and as amazing as it was to do that, and probably preventing me from having a midlife crisis today, because I kind of got it out of my system. It also kind of it fueled that negative life spiral, right? Like you don't earn money on the road, and I'm living in the back of a van eating tuna fish and crackers for weeks on end, just out of passion. And it's something that's a young man's game. and I'm glad I got to do it. But music is always been my driving force. It's the undercurrent of everything that I do on any given day.
So you co-owned a tattoo parlor.
Yeah. Wild.
Not anymore?
No. At the time, yeah, I think I was 22 at the time. And so I owned it with a couple of friends of mine, and it was a really fantastic, again, another fantastic experience. I learned a lot. But what people don't tell you about owning your own business is, you're doing it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's no day off. You don't take a vacation, or else you don't get paid, kind of a situation. And, I had reached that point in my life where, I'm in my mid-20s, and I hadn't had health insurance at that point in probably, I don't know, 11 years, 12 years, something like that, So I hadn't been to a doctor in forever. I hadn't been to a dentist. I didn't know I needed glasses until I was almost 30. So, and as it turns out, I need glasses. But, it came down to, I need health insurance. And so I had to make a little bit of a career pivot in order to, in order to be a little bit more of an adult at that point. But and so then I sold my portion of the tattoo parlor and gave it up.
What'd you do after that?
Ever since then, I've been a retail manager.
Yeah.
Strange left turn, I know.
What for? Do you want to say? Will you say?
I can't say, but I will say it's a very large, well-known organization that I currently work for. Prior to that, I worked for Hot Topic for 13 years, give or take, maybe a little over 12. So that was where I really learned my skills as a retail leader.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had to work. There was never an opportunity to be in a band and get out on the road and all that stuff. I had been in local bands, but nothing ever took off. and I had to work. I needed to get out on my own, so I was working office jobs, and then I just eventually stumbled into a career, which is like a 9 to 5 type job. So,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I stumbled into mine as well. I wanted a corporate job so I could have health benefits, and then along the way ended up discovering this whole, I don't know, talent that I didn't know that I had. And I tell everyone every day, if you had told me 22 years ago that I was going to be a retail manager, a mid-level manager, and that I would love it, I would have laughed you off the face of the planet. I would have sitting there with my pink mohawk, like, get out of here. There's no way.
Right. I'm actually glad I did it this way because I focused on my career and built that up, and it pays, and I have health insurance, so that's good. And I could keep doing this if I wanted to, I hope. But now I'm cycling in more creative stuff. So that's a choice I never wanted to make. The choice of just being broke for the rest of your life, or struggling, or really trying to make ends meet. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be comfortable to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the biggest challenge. I'm always super envious of people that can make art and have that be their living. Every night when I'm screen printing at 1:00 in the morning, and I'm watching YouTube videos of these incredible screen printers, and that's just what they do for a career. I'm just filled with jealousy. Not that I don't love what I do, but at the same time, like that's the dream. If I could just do that, I would be the happiest human being on the planet. So gotta take what you can get. I'm happy to create art and find the time to do it, but envious of people that can do that for their career.
Same here. I want to sit home and do stuff I want to do on the computer, and then I want to go out and play shows when I can, and that's it. But hey,
yep,
we got to pay the bills somehow.
Yeah, I dabbled with that in college, and I thought I'd found the right recipe. I worked in tattoo parlors, and I was a body piercer, and I made enough money that I could exist, and I could pay my bills, and I could go out and tour, and it was flexible because it wasn't corporate, and my boss was like, whatever, go when you want to go, come back when you want to come back. But it was never enough to really get comfortable, and of course the band never took off, and so it was always just living between two worlds in that space, and it's a difficult balance.
Have you ever played in a band again since that first one, or since that last one you mentioned?
Yeah, I played in a few others, kind of simultaneously with that one. I was a vocalist in kind of like a power violence grind band that got a little bit of notoriety. And then after that, I played just in a couple of fun bands, just for the love of just writing a few songs, and with no intention of ever like going out and touring, just playing a couple local shows.
Yeah. Do you miss it? Do you still do it at all?
I miss it. And every now and again, I'll get a wild idea of like, oh, I should get a few buddies together and we should maybe write some songs. And then I remember that I have 0 spare minutes left in any day, and in order to do that, I would have to give up something else. And I'm really kind of in love with everything that I'm currently doing. So, I hope that one day I'll have the opportunity to write and make music with people again. And in the meantime, I'm very content with using the label as a way to still be involved in the music community and not having to, spend my time that way.
So the label, Mind Over Matter Records, when did it get started, and where were you at in life? How old were you? Where were you living? What was going on?
So that would have been in 2009, and I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it was a few years removed from when I had quit playing with And the Sky Went Red. And what was kind of happening in the interim there is, that band, we were on a label from Michigan called Saw Her Ghost Records. And Mark, the owner of Saw Her Ghost, was a huge inspiration for me. And, I stole a lot of the stuff that he does on his label for my own label, just because what he does so well. And I had asked him like, hey, can I help you with your label? Like I want to do some of that stuff. He did a lot of handcrafted releases, and they were mostly CDs at the time. And what had happened was I was at an Evergreen Terrace show. They were playing in Detroit, and the show was over. I had to make the drive back to Grand Rapids, and the drummer wasn't feeling well. And so at the end of the set, Andrew, the singer from Evergreen Terrace, says, hey, our drummer is not going to stay here at the venue and hang out with us. He needs to go back to the hotel. Does anyone want to give him a ride? And I was like, hey, I'm leaving right now too. I'll give him a ride. So we're driving back to his hotel, and I was asking some questions. I said, hey, listen here, there's a lot of bands that your band is affiliated with, like Casey Jones, and I said, and they all have their records out on vinyl. Why don't you? Why doesn't Evergreen Terrace? And he just goes, well, why don't you do it? And I was like, okay. And initially my thought was, hey, I'll talk to Mark, and I'm kind of helping him out a little bit, and I say that loosely. He did all the heavy lifting. And then I thought, like, no, like maybe this is my chance to do something on my own. Like maybe I start my own label. And that's what I did. So I stayed in contact with the band, and I got the licensing rights from Eulogy, and the label was born. I put out Mom 001, and it was Evergreen Terrace, all because the drummer said, why don't you do it?
Wow. So, like, what do you do? Did you have experience putting together a layout? Did you know how to get vinyl pressed? How did you learn all this stuff? How did you know how to do it?
I knew a lot about the layout side of things from being in bands and also working with Mark on some of his stuff. I'm a mid-tier graphic designer at best. And so that part of it was relatively easy. I wasn't really too sure about the vinyl pressing side, but a quick Google search brought me to Pirates Press, and that seemed pretty simple and self-explanatory. The part of it that really was a challenge for me was I knew that I wanted to make things by hand. And part of it was that desire to emulate what my friend was doing. Part of it was that desire to think back to some of these other incredible record labels like Witching Hour and Level Plane or Magic Bullet at the time, and the way that they were coming up with really creative, unique packaging and how they were presenting the art in that time. And the other part of it was financial, and knowing that, to get a record jacket manufactured, it doubled the cost of the whole pressing operation. You've got the records, which, be $5 each, and then you've got to do the jackets, and that's another $4 each. And now it's like, okay, well, you've now doubled the cost of manufacturing these records. And I had been screen printing for quite some time. It was a big part of when I was in the band and we were on tour. I taught myself how to screen print so that we could make more merch. We'd have more stuff to sell at shows, and we would be able to make more money and rinse, repeat, stay on the road. So for this first release, I thought, well, I can screen print t-shirts. How hard would it be to screen print record jackets? Spoiler alert, it was really fucking hard. And I had no idea how to do it. So when you look at the test press jackets for that Evergreen Terrace, that was quite literally the absolute first thing I had ever screen printed on paper in my life. And that was just me figuring out how to do it. I had to really just kind of go through the process and figure some of that stuff out. And so I bit off way more than I could chew with that release, because I got the records manufactured, and that was pretty easy. But now I had 500 records sitting in front of me, and I had to figure out how to screen print 500 jackets and combine them together. And it was a huge learning curve. And, I have to find some of the photos maybe, but there's pictures of, I didn't have a drying rack, and I had my friends all come over, and I would print them, and then they would take them and hang them from paper clips all throughout my house in Grand Rapids. So there's a photo somewhere of just, hundreds of Evergreen Terrace record jackets just hanging from fishing line all along my house with paper clips.
We got to find that pic. That would be a great insert pic for a future release, or something for them to post on Instagram or something.
Yeah, it was absurd. And it went on like that for a while. The first several releases, just wherever I could find a flat surface to lay something down on, I would screen print and just cover up whole spaces. And it was absurd at best. But
How did you learn how to do it? Did you watch a video? Did someone help you? Did you just do it? Like, what did you do?
It was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. There wasn't really a lot of videos at the time. This is still pretty early on. This is 2009. And so, YouTube wasn't really this rich resource that it is right now. And so finding some of the inks was good. And then there was a screen printing company that was in Grand Rapids as well that did a lot of t-shirts, and they were really really kind and helped out with some simple things. So if I needed a new, if I was having a hard time burning a screen, I would bring it to them and they would burn it for me and make it look good and fix some of that stuff. But again, just through that network, I would just pick up little bits from different people. And I remember the owner of that screen printing company, he came over one day and he looked at my setup and he was like, I have printed several thousand t-shirts in my life. And he was like, I couldn't print a single thing on your setup. I don't know how you do it. And so, that was when I learned that screen printing is 50% science and it's 50% art. And everyone has their own kind of like style and taste, especially when you're printing by hand. When you've got these big automatic machines, it's all very, very science and very prescriptive, and you have to just kind of set it up just right. But, when I'm printing, if I push a little too hard or not hard enough, I get different results. And so, you get a lot of inconsistencies, but it's those inconsistencies that I love. So I learned to really kind of embrace those early on. And a lot of the stuff that I've done, I've found I just kind of made it up as I was going along. And that's kind of the charm of it all.
Yeah, I was blown away when you posted that video of you screen printing the memory entry records. What were those the test presses?
Yeah, that was the test press.
Okay. So is everything by hand? Is everything you do by hand?
Everything.
Wow. How big of a run will you do?
I don't know that I'll ever do 500 again. That Evergreen Terrace, the first one out of the gate really set me back because it was also a 6-color screen print. So, doing 3,000 prints was an astronomical task. It took me years actually to finish those. Thankfully, they didn't sell well out of the gate, so I wasn't beholden to suddenly have them all completed. So I had time to kind of wrap it up. But I've definitely done some projects that really tested my ability to do them all by hand. I think of the Juliana Theory Deadbeat Sweetheart Beat. I had the jackets manufactured, and they're these giant. They open up to 4 panels, it's 4 feet wide, and then I wanted to do a slip cover on them, and I screen printed the slip covers, and then I scored and folded and glued them all together so they fit like an O card over a cassette. But we did 525 of those, and I remember after I had printed about maybe 300 of them, and I set up a table in my living room, much to my wife's chagrin, and I just had this huge stack of paper, And she goes, "Oh, is that all 500?" And I was like, "No, that's about half." and she looked at me like I was insane, And so I just spent, weeks upon weeks, just repetitively, just scoring and folding and gluing and assembling everything together.
Was that the Juliana Theory release you posted a video of sometime last year? There was a video of you like meticulously cutting the jacket and doing something. I saw that and I was like, he's out of his mind. He's a mad genius.
That was a different Juliana Theory release. That one was for the reissue of Understand This Is a Dream. And, for that one, I was tasked in just for helping with, there was an alternate cover that we wanted to do for their tour. It was a VIP tour edition. And part of this tour edition, the VIP experience, was that they were going to take Polaroids with the fans. And so they asked me to design, this alternate slipcover. And I had this harebrained idea, and I was like, what if I design this cover, but also what if there's a spot on the cover where the fan can put their Polaroid directly into the album jacket with these little tabs, So that one was 250 copies. And so I did the screen prints and folded them, and then on each one glued these little tabs on them so the Polaroid would fit inside of it for the fans. And then we wanted to have a die cut jacket. And for the first chunk of the tour, the die cut jackets weren't done. And so myself and Jason Zymet from Unoriginal Vinyl, we sat down with an X-Acto blade, and we die cut the records by hand for the first part of the tour to make sure that everyone got their fancy jackets in time.
Wow. How do you get the ideas for this stuff? How do you get inspired?
I steal a lot of great ideas. I'll never pretend to be the originator of them. But for me, I start with the album art. I look for themes from the record. I talk to the bands about, and this, I start with, if anything were possible, how would you want this to be presented to the world? This is your art. This is your masterpiece. And we just want to bring it into the tangible. So, from there, every now and again, the artists are like, do whatever you like. And then my starting point is, what's something I've never done? What's something I've never seen? And how can I make this better than the last release that I put out? I want to make sure every release is just a little bit more absurd than the previous.
Have you ever thought about expanding or trying to take it to the next level, or making it bigger, or not doing it by hand? Like not doing it all by hand?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of in a middle spot with that right now. Like it used to be that the jackets had to be made entirely by hand. So if I couldn't hand create it, it just didn't exist. And a lot of that was born out of financial necessity. Like I didn't, I think about the first double LP that I didn't have the funds to press the record and do a gatefold jacket. So I was like, how can I make a gatefold jacket by hand? That's got to be the goal. And so now I'm in a spot where, I'm able to manufacture a little bit more of that stuff. And then it's about, how do I add a little twist onto it? And how do I, make that a little bit more unique? So to that end, I think the handmade part of it is what sets Mind Over Matter apart. I think anybody with a couple of bucks can package it all together, send an email over to A to Z Media, and have a record in 5 to 6 months. And no offense to the people who that's exactly what they do, because that's a lot of people. I think that there's more heart to it when it does have those little imperfections, when there's that piece of it that someone cared enough to pour over this for hours,
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know about the label back in 2009-10 when you got started. I did know about you after doing this podcast, because I saw some of the stuff you did on social media, and I think you worked with Not Waving But Drowning at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on a tour with them in 2003 and this day forward. So I had seen some things you did. So, after working with you on the Memory Entry release, I just felt really lucky to be able to, because I didn't know everything was screen printed by hand. And then getting the actual record and feeling it, and you can feel the texture and just all the care. And I saw people posting the record and the little personal notes you put in there for everybody. I was like, wow, we're just really lucky to be able to work with you.
I appreciate that. I'm lucky to have gotten to work with you and with Casey. Obviously, I really, I am eternally grateful for Casey and Iodine, and just what a great person to have in your corner as well.
Absolutely. Yes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. To be able to team up with both you and Casey for the release was great. By the way, if I ever came off the wrong way in any of our phone conversations or emails, I'm sorry. When things get complicated, I panic. And then I don't want to come off like a dick or angry or anything. So if I ever did, I'm sorry.
I assure you did not.
All right, good. Because it happens all the time. Like today, all right. Today I was at the dentist, right? And there was like a new receptionist. And I was not a new patient, so I didn't want to fill out all the forms on my phone, right? They make you do it on your phone now. Mm-hmm. And I'm old. I don't want to. And I was like, I don't have my dental number, like the dental plan number. I don't have it. Is that going to be okay? And she was like, and I was like, I don't have the card. Is it going to be okay? And I felt myself like starting to, and then like someone else had to step in, and I was like, oh no, like, I don't want to be that guy, Does that ever happen to you?
Not really. I mean, I'm probably guilty of the other side of that, like I don't really get rattled. If anything, I've been accused of being, maybe a little too robotic, and I've had people my whole life just be like, man, just get pissed, just yell for a little bit, it's just not my style. I'll cut to the bone. I'll say some mean stuff, but it'll be really just like we're talking right now. And then it'll just come out. And I'm like, oh, that was probably meaner than I intended it to be.
Yeah. The benefit of being somebody who doesn't get mad, like really mad. If you do get really mad, people really notice. They're like, uh-oh, we made him mad. Like,
exactly.
and then they'll really listen. That's happened to me before,
Yeah, it's that is even with my family, there was one day where the kids were acting up in the car, slammed on the brakes, raised my voice, and it was my wife's response, like, ooh, You made Dad yell. That's how you know. That's how you know you got there.
The car is the worst. I remember a previous relationship I was in, like she had a kid, the mom and daughter were just yelling at each other in the car, and I'm driving, and I think it was like the same thing. I had to stop and be like, no more arguing. I can't take it. Just no one say anything until we get to the thing. Ugh.
Yeah. That is very real life.
Yeah.
I want to go back because you mentioned the handwritten notes, and I think that also kind of ties into your previous question where you asked about like if I ever thought about expanding or not doing as much by hand. And there was one night, and this was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. We were already living in Chicago, and I told my wife, we were sitting in the living room, and we had just finished a pretty big release. I think it was maybe Zayo. We did 750 copies, and I had just finished writing 750 notes. And I said, I think I'm going to stop writing the notes. Like that's really slowing me down. The people are eager for their records. There was a pre-order that went on a little too long. There were some pressing delays. I just moved across the country, and if I could cut that out, I would be able to ship these out so much faster. I think people would be stoked on it. And no sooner did I finish that sentence than I got a little alert on my phone, Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a post, and I opened it up, and someone had taken a picture of all the records they bought from me over the years with every note laid on top of the album cover. And it was just like, it said something like, man, like this is why you support independent music. When you buy something from Mind Over Matter Records, you get these handwritten notes. I keep every one. And then the comments started coming in and they're like, same. I keep them with every record I've ever bought. Austin's the best. And I was like, I can't stop. Like this is now something that I do. And, and I've learned that people are okay if they don't get their record same day, that they're okay with knowing that it's going to come with love and care, and that people genuinely look forward to the notes. And I found that most people keep them. They keep all of them. And I think that's incredible.
I love that. That's like real-time fate right there. Like, no, you're going to keep writing the notes.
Yeah. The universe stopped me dead in my tracks. Like, nope, that's not an option.
Yeah. Just if experiencing it firsthand, the level of care and everything else, it was more than I could have asked for, and the rest of the guys in the band for our first release. So again, thank you.
My pleasure.
What's your biggest release you've ever done? The hottest seller?
It's going to be a little bit of a tie. The Zayo Yashira split 7-inch that I did sold like hotcakes. That's the highest quantity I've ever done. We did 750 copies of the first run. It sold out crazy fast, and so we actually did a second run of it, which felt really nice. I think the band that I know consistently will sell out every time the minute I put up for sale is going to be Bad Rabbits from Boston.
Who are they?
So they are impossible to describe. And anyone who's listening to this, you're going to come off of the New Scene podcast and you're going to check them out and think that does not correlate in any way, shape, or form. But it's a bunch of hardcore kids that play pop music. And it's very soul and funk and R&B inspired. They almost have their own genre called New Crack Swing. And, many of them were former, backing band for Slick Rick the Ruler. And they are a band's band. When they were on Warped Tour, it would be, they would sound check to Rage Against the Machine and Dillinger Escape Plan. And then they would go up there and just play this slick pop dancey music and just get everybody moving. And in the crowd, you'd see Acacia Strain just getting down to it. And they never really, they were on the verge of just blowing up and taking off and being huge. And then, tale as old as time. And, they ended up not getting the record deal and doing all of those things. But, every record I release from them, I have to make sure that I have every record ready to go, because I'll put it up for sale. It's gone within a couple of hours. And then I've got the next couple of weeks ahead of me of just packing, sending out hundreds and hundreds of records. And they're just absolutely incredible musicians. So everyone should go listen to Bad Rabbits and give your ears a little break from the hardcore and get some sweet, sultry pop sounds.
I'm intrigued. Where are they? Are they still together? Do they still play?
They do. They don't tour heavily. They've got family and careers and stuff now, as many of us do. But they'll get together and play just a handful of shows, maybe each year. They just recently played in Boston. They opened up for the Receiving End of Sirens. They played a couple of shows back to back. But they have such a cult following that a couple years ago they played one show in Boston, they played another show in LA, and I flew to both of them. And I remember being in that Boston show, and they got to the end, and there's a part with like a little bit of a sing along, and the band stopped playing, and the Sinclair was just packed, and everyone in that crowd just kept singing. They kept repeating this chorus, and the band was off the stage, and they just kept going. And that's when you're like, this is just a big giant family, that's here in this room. And so anytime I get to work with them, they're one of those bands that they're like, just do your thing, man. Just we're excited to have this on vinyl. Just make it special, make it fun. And they let me run wild with it.
I love that. The label, is it profitable? Do you break even? Are you losing money? Where do you stand? Or does it depend?
Actively losing money on a daily basis. 100%. There's a few things in my ethos, right? Is I want the label to be handmade, but not feel like it's handmade, So, when you had that surprise of realizing it was all made by hand, like that's what I love, it's like, I made that in my garage. The other part of it is I want it to be affordable. And so I often undervalue myself when I'm putting a release out. And even working with Memory Entry and talking to Casey, we were going back and forth about the price. And Casey was like, dude, you're nuts. You made this by hand. We could charge an extra buck. And so, for most releases, for me, it's about, I want people to experience the music first. I want people to get this record, and I want it to be the coolest record in their collection. And, you could look at it and go, oh, this should be a $40 record, but I can't justify that. It feels criminal to me, So I sell pretty much everything just a touch above cost, and, very few releases sell out. So for the most part, once everything's said and done, most releases end up losing a little bit of money. And there's always those releases where by the time the record is in hand and ready to go, the band is broken up, or, no one's playing shows anymore. And I've maybe only sold 50 of the 200 copies that I pressed. So there hasn't been a year since the label has started where I can say that I turned a profit.
By the way, the Memory Entry record is almost sold out. So if you're listening to this, go to the Mind Over Matter site and buy one, because we want to sell it out. I want that to happen. Look, I know I'm being somewhat greedy right now, but I don't care. But Austin, I follow your philosophy with the band. I'm like, we're brand new. Most people haven't heard us. We're just getting started. So I guess you kind of have to do this anyway, unless you're insane. But I do it like a touch above. I'm not selling $30 shirts at a show. I'm not selling like $25 LPs at a show. I'm like slightly above cost, because I'm like, I want people to hear us. I want people to hear us and be impressed. And then if we get huge later, then I'll gouge them. You work up to it.
I share that philosophy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really about, a lot of these bands aren't well known, and so you can't come out swinging with this really expensive stuff. And I'm fortunate enough that because I do so much of it by hand, it doesn't add immediate cost into it. The only cost is my time, and so to that end, that's my donation to the bands. That's how I see it. I don't factor that into the costs at all. I just look at raw materials, and then that becomes where I kind of do my cost basis from.
Do you still love it? Are you still very passionate about it? Do you ever have periods where you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Why am I doing this?
No, never. It's that creative outlet that I have. I think if that were stripped away, I would be missing a part of what makes me. I have to create. I have to make art. And if it's not going to be music, then it's going to come through this. So I feel like I have to do it in order to make myself whole and complete. And the people that I've met along the way, yourself included, has made it invaluable. I feel like I truly feel like I have a network of friends, even though it's people that I've maybe never met in real life. And I've met just some of the most sincere, incredibly kind people through the label. And that to me is worth more than money could buy, right?
You're absolutely right. This scene has given me everything. It's still where I'm happiest. If I'm at a show and I'm not too tired, I'm happy. If I'm playing a show, I'm always happy. And just the number of bands and people I've met through the podcast or now through the band, it's where I get all of my enrichment from, or most of it anyway.
Yeah, because you work at home, so you know it's probably even that's a little bit of like a social outlet for you too, right?
Yes, which I'm eternally grateful for because post-pandemic, I didn't realize how tough of a situation I was in. I worked from home, and I would basically only leave that. I'm involved in recovery too, straight edge by necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go do that and then just come home and work, and that's like it for years. And when I look back on that now, I'm like, oh, that's not so healthy. But now that I'm, regularly going to band practice and hanging out with those guys and going to more shows and going to play shows and hopefully traveling some more in the near future to do that, I'm like, oh, yeah, thank goodness I'm not living that solitary lifestyle anymore.
And I think that's where you and I are almost again like opposites of one another because I'm not naturally an extroverted person, and so I'm at work all day. It's busy. I'm talking to just hundreds and hundreds of people. I'm on stage. I'm giving all of my energy, and then I come home and I've got this energetic family, and I'm giving them what I have left of my energy, and then where I recover all of that is at the end of the night once everyone has gone to bed, and there's a little bit of silence. That's when I get to work on my art, and that's when I get to recharge my battery by just throwing on a record and just creating something, even if it's for an hour. I just have to have that little bit of time so that I can get up the next morning and I can do it all again and not feel like I'm already depleted.
Yeah, see, I was going to ask about that because you do keep late hours, and that's when you do the label work. So what time do you get home from work, and then what time will you start working on label stuff?
Yeah, sorry for all the midnight text messages.
No, it's fine. See, I don't care if people text me late because my phone is always on silent. And if I don't see it, I don't see it. I'll see it in the morning. Right. Some people are like, don't text me after X. I'm like, dude, just silence your phone. Like, I'll text you whenever. Like, you can look at it or not. I mean, come on. What are we doing?
Yeah, my work schedule varies a little bit, but I would say, most days I'm home by, 7:00 after my commute and everything else. And then do the family stuff and the bedtime routines and all of that stuff. And I would say most nights, if I'm going to start getting into my label work, it's usually maybe like 9:30, 10 p.m. when I start. And depending on the severity or intensity of the project, it's not uncommon for me to be working on that until 1, 2 in the morning, depending on how much of it I need to get done or how quickly a deadline is looming.
How early do you get up?
Usually like 7:30 most days. If I have an earlier shift, maybe 6 a.m.
So that's like 7 hours sleep. That's enough for you?
Yeah, and that's on a good day. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the logistics because I work from 9 to 5. It's much busier now than it used to be. So there's more site visits involved. I'm just in front of computers all day. And then I'll pivot to the podcast, and then I edit all night. And around 10 or 11, usually 10, I'm like sick of it. I can't do it anymore. And that's when I eat ice cream and watch stuff on the internet or like play a video game for half an hour. So that's like my time to recharge. And it's actually not good because I don't know if you experienced this. When I hit 40, I could no longer eat whatever I want, go to sleep, and wake up feeling good. Like last night Tuesday nights are horrible. I'm out late at a thing I do on Tuesday nights. I come back at 10 p.m. and I eat McDonald's because it's like the only thing open. So I eat McDonald's and drink like a medium orange soda and then eat an ice cream bar. I woke up, it felt like someone beat my head in with a hammer. Like my throat hurt. I had the worst headache ever. I felt horrible. I can't do it anymore. Does this happen to you?
Thankfully, no. I'm a garbage disposal. I eat everything, and because of the hours that I keep, when the time comes for me to sleep, I sleep like a rock. Nothing wakes me up. It takes an act of God to get me out of bed. Again, for better, for worse. And so I always say that I time travel. I'll be working and then I time travel in this morning. And, I very rarely do I dream. It's almost like I just fall into a black hole for a few hours. And inevitably there's some fatigue in there just because I don't get enough sleep. But that's been my whole life. I learned early on that idle hands are not good for me. So keep myself busy and keep myself out of trouble.
Same here. That's my philosophy now. Do you travel for the label? Will you go to fests and set up a thing and sell records and all that stuff?
Absolutely. I hadn't done a lot of that until somewhat recently. I've definitely traveled to like attend record release shows with the bands and things of that nature. I haven't done the tent. I think that's going to be the next, maybe the next thing that I will do. But I'll definitely show up and I'll have a little distro set up so that people can check out some of my releases. And I sponsored a smaller festival in Nashville last year where I showed up and had a table to myself and did some of those things. So I'm still kind of dipping my toes in the water. I think the biggest challenge is that the label is entirely me. My wife's a great support, but I don't ask her to do anything, and nor does she really like jump in on it. So if I do that, that means I'm kind of going by myself. I don't have employees or anything like that.
Right. So it's just you.
It's just me.
That's got to be good too, right? Because the podcast, there's a team behind the podcast. There's folks at Iodine who help out with various things, but just the show itself and the editing of the show and the making of the content is just me. And I prefer it that way these days because it's just easier to manage, quicker to manage. Do you feel like that with the label?
100%. Yeah, it's, I have a taste level for it, and, there's an expectation around quality and some other things. And so, there's definitely moments, especially when it comes to social media, where I wish that I had someone on the team that I could delegate that to. Because again, there's only so many hours in a day. So creating content and updating social media is what falls on the wayside the most. But from like the creation standpoint of it, like, yeah, I mean, I want people to know you're going to get a note from me and that I packaged it, and that I screen printed and did all of those things, that it didn't get created by anyone other than Austin.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's what I want, the band to get big enough that I can turn the social media over to a label. That would be good. That would be great. Because when we were doing the shows and I was like posting the stories every day and then the posts and then tagging and then reposting, I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore.
It's terrible.
It's really awful. That's the part I like the least. Everything else is great though. What is your criteria for working with a band? Do you have specific things you look for? Do you have specific sounds that you like the best?
The most obvious criteria is I got to like the music. I need to enjoy the record. I think the second criteria is that the people in the band, or at least the people maybe that I'm interfacing with, they've got to be nice people. If you're a douchebag, I don't want to spend all this time and energy helping you. And maybe that's crass, but that's how I feel. And then I think the third component of it is always, does the artist want to make this a really special release? And there have been plenty of releases that I passed on because, I would talk to the artist and they would go, all right, well, we're done. It's mixed. It's mastered. We've got the artwork. It's on the template. We want to put this on Spotify next week and start a pre-order and be done with it. And I said, well, that's not how I do it. I want to, let's think about how we can really make this special. And, I've had people say, I don't want to make it special. I want it out. And I'm like, you don't need me for that. You can do that entirely on your own. And so I found that I have the most enjoyment when there's a mutual excitement about the physical side of things, when the band gets that package and their mind is a little bit blown by it as well. And so that has to be kind of a mutual understanding for it as well in order for it to be fun for me. So if that's not there, then I won't do it.
I love that. Yeah, having the standards. So you've had to do that where someone's like, oh, just put it out. And you're like, that's not what I do. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I've passed on a good number of releases. And I don't blame anyone for it, right? Like, I know that my method of putting out a record is agonizing for the artist. The record has been done. You've lived with it for X amount of months. And now I'm saying, well, you're going to sit on it for a little bit longer while I cook up some crazy ideas and I do 20 of them at a time in my garage and build them all by hand. And yeah, there's a faster way. There's a more efficient way. And we both know it. And I have intentionally chosen the path of most resistance toward getting it. And as long as everyone involved knows that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel and that it's going to be, hopefully a better experience for the fans, then we're going to be a good match.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this. Even talking to people on the podcast and everyone I've interviewed, I've had Jason from Unoriginal Vinyl on the show. I've had all kinds of people on the show, and I still didn't know exactly what to expect. Also, I've never been in a band that's put out an official release on a label before. This is the first time, so just looking back on it now, I'm like, wow, I'm glad it worked out like this, because again, that extra care that went into it. Wait, hold on. It's a real artisan organization, it's real artisan work. And John, if you're listening, I said artisan this time instead of artesian. So there you go.
There has definitely been bands that I've worked with, and I'll name him by name, but Damien Moyle from Damien Dunn. He is he's the one that I think, as much as we create such beautiful art together, I know that it grinds his gears, because he's always so eager to put them out. And every time we work on a release, he'll call me every week and just say, okay, I've got a new idea for how we can put this music out right now, and you can start a pre-order. And every time I'm like, Damien, I'm not going to do a pre-order. I'm not going to do a 5-month pre-order, man. And he'll acquiesce and stomp his feet a little bit more, and we'll kind of go back and forth. But it's I'm a collector first, right? Like the reason that I started this label, the whole thing started is because I wanted to buy an Evergreen Terrace record. I wanted it for my own collection, right? And so I look at it from the standpoint of a collector, and I hate that I have to keep track of pre-orders, that I'll buy a record and then not get it for 9 months. It'll show up and I'll forget that I paid for the damn thing. And so, for me, another part of the label is to have it be a better experience for the fans, and when I start the pre-order, it's an air quote pre-order. I've already got the records in hand, and so I know that it's going to be a seamless transition to getting this to the fans. And for you and I on the back end, Keith, it's agonizing, because again, the record's been done, and we know it, and we're excited to share it with everybody, and so that anticipation builds. And that's what the fans don't know, is that to them, it just feels like, oh, here it is, magical. This is great. This is so exciting. And so it takes a lot of mutual understanding for that to be fun for everybody involved. And every now and again, for an artist, it's not fun. And there's also been times where, when the second release comes around, they've said, hey, that was a cool record, but we can't wait that long again. We're going to go a different direction. And I understand.
Yeah, it was like a whole year that went by while we were working things out with you and Iodine and sitting on that EP. And after a while, I just forgot about it. It was just, because we weren't playing shows. We weren't at that point yet. And we were just waiting. And then once it came time to actually do stuff, then I got very anxious. I'm like, all right, it needs to come out. It needs to come out. But at this point, we've had those 5 songs for so long, I don't even want to hear them anymore. Like the recordings, I won't even add them to like a story anymore, because I'm like, I just don't want to hear it. I like them. I love them. I love playing them, because I'm still developing the live show, and we can do different things with that. But where I'm at right now, I'm like, I don't want to hear the recording anymore.
Yeah, I do hope that I can find a better solution for that. I mean, Damien says the same thing. He's like, by the time the record comes out, I hate these songs. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. The flip side of that is, for me, and again, it being a one-man operation, and what a lot of people don't know is, when I had done some pre-orders in the past, when people would get frustrated, they want to know where their record is, I would have someone who would send me an email, tweet at me, send me an Instagram DM, and then call the number on the website. And then finally I would pick up the phone and go, hey, every method of communication you've chosen is just going to me. It's just my phone. You don't need to do all of them. It's too much. It's overkill. And some people, are punishers, as I would call them, where they just relentless, just once a week. Hey, where's my record? Hey, where's my record? And I'm like, man, it's been 15 years. I've shipped every record anyone's ever paid for. I'm not going to rip you off. You will get it. And that was when I really adopted this mentality of like, hey, pre-orders are done. That's a thing of the past. I don't like waiting. I don't want to make other people wait. and really trying to put the fan first and really protecting their experience. But to your point, it takes a toll on the artist, and there's got to be homeostasis there somewhere. I just haven't found it.
Yeah, but I also think a lot of artists feel that way. I've talked to other bands, big bands, small bands. By the time the record comes out, they're ready to move on to the next thing. I think that just happens,
Yeah, maybe that's true.
Yeah. What are some things coming up on Mind Over Matter that you're excited about, that we need to know about? Let us know.
I have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I'm going to spill some secrets here on the podcast. So this is going to be exciting.
Love exclusives here on the New Scene.
So let's kind of go chronologically. So we're still fresh off the Memory Entry release, and I'm still very excited about it. The packaging on that came out incredible. I think the colors look awesome, and like you mentioned, there's only a couple left. So I want everyone to have that in their collection, because I think it looks, and obviously the EP is incredible too. By the time this releases, the new Mission to Sleep LP will be out. They're a band from Boston, very in the post-hardcore scene, melodic and heavy. Right now, there's 2 singles out. We just launched the pre-orders for that one, but as I've said, the pre-orders mean the records are in my hand right now, so that will be out at the end of April. As we move through, I've got not 1 but 2 different Bad Rabbits records that I'm going to put up for sale, and those are waiting me. I'm doing some really crazy stuff with the packaging on those, so those are just going to take me a minute to button up, but those should be out probably by May or June. And my conquest in taking over Brooklyn gets a little bit closer, so I've got 2 Brooklyn bands that'll be out by the summer as well. One of them is going to be the second LP from The Twin, which is a really incredible alternative emo band. I think of them as like modern day Elliott. So if there's any Elliott fans out there, hopefully you really like it. They've got like a little mix of like some shoegaze stuff in there. It's fantastic. And then the other one is a band named Ben, which this one interweaves into the whole Brooklyn scene. But the drummer is Chris Enriquez from Spotlights, and the vocalist is Artie Shepherd from Mind Over Matter, the band, not the label, which is funny, as well as Air Type 11. And it's just some really great like alternative rock stuff. And you actually played a show with them recently, correct?
Yeah, I've seen them a couple of times now. They're great. I'm looking forward to hearing that one.
Yeah, that record's going to be fantastic. So all of that should be out by the summer. And we're doing a second pressing of the Oriska LP that sold out in December as well. So it's going to be a very, very busy few months, and just lots of really incredible music.
Awesome. Well, Austin, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, I'm just really happy with the way everything came out, and so are the rest of the guys in the band. And I can't wait to do more and sell those final records and play a lot more shows and all that stuff. Hopefully I get to meet you at some point. We do want to plan a Midwest thing, so we'll definitely meet at some point. And Casey, if you're listening, and I know you are, thank you so much from all the support on the Iodine recording side too. So I'm happy. This is something I've really wanted to do. I can check that off the list, and Austin, you made it possible. So thank you.
It has been such a pleasure getting to know you over the last year, and I'm so excited to be on the podcast. I'm a fan first, so I've been listening for a long time, and it's great to get to chat with you all. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with any of the releases that I've put out, I look forward to writing you a note sometime in the near future. And I feel like there's probably a record for everyone who's listening to this podcast that you're going to enjoy.
And there you have it. Austin Kihn. Excellent conversation. I was happy to have Austin on the show because I haven't seen a ton of long-form interviews out there with him. I think a couple podcasts. So it was really great to learn all about Austin and get to know him better. Because as you know, Memory Entry worked with him on the release, and we just couldn't be happier with the whole thing. One thing that everybody says 100% for sure is that the vinyl looks great, and it does. I mean, the packaging is great. The record itself looks awesome. And since it all fit on one side of the 12-inch, they did that painted thing on the back of the records, and I think that looks really cool. Vinyl looks fantastic. The level of love and care that went into the release is great. We're just so happy with the way everything turned out, and we're lucky we got to work with the label. And That's the level of care you get with certain independent labels. I mean, Austin helped out with everything from making the artwork look the best that it possibly could to helping out with some of the promotional material, the write-ups and all of that stuff, giving some input, and it was just a great experience. So thank you so much, Austin, for coming on the show. So let's check in. How are we doing? I am doing okay. I got through my hellish 3 weeks of work. Things have settled down to a normal level now, so I feel better. I'm getting caught up with the show. I'm getting caught up with life. I'm getting some much needed relaxing and sitting around in. I'm amping up my workout schedule because that is much needed. March was a light month, so April needs to be more. And it was. And I finally figured out a system where I think it'll work better. I tried doing a bunch of stuff all in a row and then doing that multiple times a week, and it's not working. So kind of spacing things out day by day. Run one day, body weight one day, weights another day, and that seems to be working better. So I'm going to go with that. I feel better, and I think I look better. So there you go. Besides that, it's business as usual, working on the podcast and working on new music. We are deep in the trenches of writing LP1 for Memory Entry, and I really like what we're coming up with so far. It's different, not a complete tonal shift, but different, more intricate, I would say. And I can't wait to see where it goes. Speaking of Memory Entry, we played our record release show at the end of March at the Windjammer, which is a bar in Queens here in New York City. Had never been there before. Decent venue. They have a room in the back with a stage, and it's a nice room. It's a decent room to play. Opening up the show was Bearchild, which is my friend Justin's band. He fronts that band and plays guitar and plays keyboards. Justin is also in On the Might of Princes and a ton of other bands. He plays keyboards in On the Might of Princes as well. They opened up the show. Memory Entry was next. And it was a great set. I was just committed to not stressing out too much and trying to make everything perfect and tripping over myself and overthinking it too much. And I didn't. It was a good time. I felt great about the set. The room was packed. There was a lot of friends there. It was just an overall great time. And headlining the show was Husbandry. Now, this was my first time seeing Husbandry, and I was really, really impressed. Very interesting hardcore / post-hardcore band out of New York City. If you have not heard them, definitely check it out. Thank you so much to Husbandry and Bearchild for playing this show with us and making our record release possible. But none of the bands have been paid yet. The Windjammer still has not paid any of us for the show. So I would like to see that happen at some point. The show was March 28th. It's May 3rd, and no one has been paid yet. I mean, allegedly the payout is coming. Apparently there's been communication with the venue, and it takes them a long time to pay out the bands. If it were me, I would do it the same night. I don't know, but let's see what happens. The next day we headed to Philadelphia and played Orpheus Garden, which is a house venue in South Philly. Really cool place, really nice collective of people, nice big spacious basement. Great lighting, decent sound, awesome crowd. There was a lot of people there. Everybody watched every band. and plenty of room in the basement. Because, when I hear basement show, I think, oh no, we're going to be cramped in there. I'm going to have to play like this. It's going to be weird. But it wasn't. It was spacious. I could stand up straight. A ton of people could fit down there. It was amazing. I'm really happy that we got to play in Philadelphia because, I'm from there. Armando used to live there. And it was our first out-of-state show. Sharing Contest was the first band who played. They're an emo band out of Philadelphia. Excellent stuff. Brackish was after them. Brackish is an emo post-hardcore band out of Philly and Jersey. My friend Connor plays guitar and sings in that band. I haven't seen him in a long time, and he's the one who got us on the show, so thank you so much, Connor, for that. Another excellent band. The Hog Doctors were up next. Solid lineup. I really liked every band who played. And Memory Entry headlined, and I had even more fun at this show because I was more loose and the crowd was really into it. People moshed. People have never moshed for us before. That was cool. Haven't experienced that in a long time. And the house show, Orpheus Garden, the house show venue, paid all the bands right after the show was done. You see, they took the money that they got and they gave it right to the bands at the end of the show. Crazy concept, right? I know, it's wild, but thank you so much, Orpheus Garden, for having us. If any of you out there have the opportunity to attend a show there or play a show there, definitely go do it. Excellent venue. So let's check in with the New Scene Community Hour. I have some new Spotify comments here. Episode 250 with Quinn Murphy of Love Letter and Verse. O. Hall said, hell of an interview. Verse rules. Much love from Long Island. Thank you, O. Hall. That was definitely one of my favorite recent conversations. Episode 244 with Steve Von Till. ESBJ says, wonderful interview. Loved this one. Yes. Thank you, ESBJ. Another great one. Episode 241 with Chris Spencer of Unsane and Human Impact. ESBJ said, very cool and interesting interview. A lot of stuff I never knew about Unsane. Very excited to listen to the new Human Impact. John's always been one of my favorite drummers going back to As the Sun Sets. Great job, Keith. Thank you, ESBJ. Yes, check out the Human Impact record if you haven't heard it. I loved that one because I learned a lot more about Unsane, and it was a great conversation. And you mentioned As the Sun Sets. That band is so good. I went back and listened to them because of that comment. Check out their LP, Each Individual Voice is Dead in the Silence, from 1999. It's on YouTube. What an incredible record. Episode 208 with Jeff Rickley. Nasty Chad says, thanks for this interview. Done very well. I like that you did the recap at the end. Yes, thank you, Nasty Chad. An amazing way to kick off 2024, that interview. I had been waiting a long time to talk to Jeff, and any huge fan of Ink and Dagger is a friend of mine for sure. And we have a comment here from the latest episode with Rocky Vadalato. The person's name, it looks like it's their phone number or something, so I'm not going to say that. But this person says, so important to do what brings joy to your life. As much as I enjoy every episode of this show, kudos to you to recognize the need to put your mental health first. And yes, this person is referencing at the end of the show. I said I'm going to be cutting back next year. I don't know how much, maybe 12 episodes a year, maybe 24. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But there will be less because I just can't keep up anymore. And there's other stuff going on. So we'll see. Let's see what happens. Let's see how I feel at the end of the year. Let's see what 2026 brings. Oh, speaking of Spotify, Spotify took down a bunch of old episodes because I've got music clips in a lot of episodes from, 95 all the way up until recent times. I had to take them all down and take out all the music, and I'm going to have to re-upload all of them. I don't know when I'm going to do it. I might wait until next year when things are slower. I might just start doing it on Saturdays now. I don't know. So if you're in Spotify and you see a back episode missing, go listen to it on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. They are all still there, but I'm working on it, and I'm slowly going through and taking out all of the music out of every episode and re-uploading them because I don't want more episodes to get taken down, and I don't want to potentially get sued. So that's everything that's going on this week. I'm back next week with a new episode and a new guest, and I'll see you then.